Hey guys, welcome to Smallmouth Crush. My name is Travis Manson, and today I wanted to do a follow-up video of the introductory video I did the other day, just to give you guys kind of an idea of how I came up through the Opens to qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about my journey. And to begin, we have to go back a few years. We actually have to go back to the spring of 2010. So it was then that I decided that 2010 was going to be the year that I qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. And it was so overwhelming. I remember spending all my free time looking on the internet, printing out stacks of information on all three bodies of water that I'm going to be fishing in the next couple of months. So the first lake that was on my radar was Lake Champlain. Of course, at that time, I've never traveled outside of Wisconsin to fish in a tournament. In fact, I didn't do a whole lot of fishing outside of Wisconsin, even back in those days. It was pretty much local stuff. So I felt confident on the information that I gathered, some of the videos that I watched. I was also watching some past Elite Series events. I mean, this is back when it was still on DVDs and you had to order them through the mail. And so I was able to, I felt pretty good as far as being prepared for the event. I had no idea exactly how it would go down. You know, as far as, can I compete? Is it going to work out for me? You know, I had doubts just like everyone, but I had a really powerful mindset going into it. I was really focused on the prize at hand. I was probably, looking back, it's probably been the most focused I've ever been in my life. And I really would love to be able to harness what was going on in my head back then and apply it today, which I have been working on that. But there's a really cool story that I want to just get out there real quick and share this with you. So earlier that year, it was actually probably 2009 or so, a good year before the actual Open tournament, I decided to, and I've always been big on thinking positive, and I understand how your thoughts create your reality. I mean, I'm a huge believer in that. But at the same time, I realize that life gets in the way and it's very challenging to be able to have that positive mentality on a consistent basis. I promise you that's what separates the guys doing extremely well on the Elite Series and the guys who are struggling. It's all about their mindset. It has nothing to do with their abilities, anything like that. It's strictly how they are thinking. How are they thinking about life in general? What type of negativity are they exposed to or not exposed to? And it's hard. It's hard, especially when you're on the Elite Series and you may not have a huge financial backing to be able to keep that positive attitude. And that's no different in business or anything else. So trying to find that balance, actually understanding it and then applying it is really, I think, the key to everything. And I'm as guilty as anyone else. Although I feel I have an understanding of it, I don't always apply it. But I did apply it back in those early years, especially in 2009, when I actually took the time to do a visualization experiment, which was huge. In fact, I forgot about what I've done as far as this experiment, and to see it one day a couple years later, it was in a stack of paper, and to come across it, I was really blown away. So what it was I took this sheet of paper right here, and it's basically an article I found on Bassmaster.com. I forgot who it was in the lead, but it was an article explaining how so-and-so was leading on day one of the first Northern Open Bass Tournament. So it actually happened, and then it went down and named who else was in the top 12 and whatnot. And I inserted my name and put a fictitious weight and kind of just changed the words of the article to read that it was actually about me. So it was my success story. Although it wasn't real, it became real on paper, and I actually visualized this and read this every night for months. And I mean, and then I put it aside. I let it go. And here's the strangest part about it. So fast forward a year later, and I'm fishing my first ever Bassmaster Northern Open on Lake Champlain. And lo and behold, I was actually leading after day one. And I was leading by a weight of 21 pounds, 5 ounces was my total weight. And this article was actually about the Bassmaster tournament on Lake Champlain. And it had, I picked the exact weight in the title, 2105, as far as, basically, here's what the title of the article says. It says, Wisconsin's rookie Manson sacks 2105 worth a largemouth. And I actually did catch 2105 worth a largemouth on Lake Champlain on day one of the Northern Open. Exactly what this article stated. Now, this article also stated, and here's the first line, Wisconsin's Travis Manson has had a rough rookie season on the Bassmaster Elite Series. But the picture is brightened considerably for him since the tour moved to the Northeast and he has his best finish, blah, blah, blah. So all I did was take out the name of whoever this person was and popped in my name. So this person did have a tough rookie season. This is a fictitious article, but what happened is everything came true to what I visualized and mentally accepted in my head, which was I was going to catch 2105 of largemouth on Lake Champlain, and unfortunately, I was going to struggle my first year on the Bassmaster Elite Series. So I was able to qualify, and yes, I did struggle my first year quite a bit, and my second year was a little bit better. I actually had some really good day one and day two finishes in the Elite Series, especially day one tournaments, but obviously you need to be good in all 2 days to make those cuts. And there was a few times I just barely missed the cut, but all in all, it's just kind of freaky thinking about how this article really portrayed exactly what happened in my future. And I believe it was based on my thoughts. I mean, it was totally based on my thoughts. So just kind of a neat story. Be careful what you think about. Obviously, I feel I kind of lost that momentum after the Opens. When I got on tour, I was distracted by a lot of things, and I wasn't able to stay focused as I should have been. And so, I mean, that's something that I'm preparing for when I do get the opportunity to be able to fish at that level again and be able to go and compete. I have to be able to get my mind right. I think that's the most important thing, and I hope you guys get the point. I don't think this is cheesy. I think this is pretty crazy about what happened. So I don't know if you guys ever had any experiences like that. If you did, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. So definitely write a comment below for me. Okay, so here I am getting ready to head out to New York. And I actually, at the time, was running a fairly older model Chevy Tahoe. And this bad boy, I don't think it was going to make the drive out to New York for me. So I actually, my parents decided that they wanted to come out and support me, and they were going to kind of go out and do their own thing and travel up through Maine while I'm practicing. So I actually got there a week early. I got there on a Thursday night, and I remember at the time such a long drive. I mean, just getting into Pennsylvania and driving through PA and then going up through New York. And I remember going driving over Oneida Lake and just kind of thinking, man, that's a lake I read about, heard about. I wonder if I'm ever going to be able to fish there. And so we get to Lake Champlain, And the first time I see the lake, we're coming up over a hill, and I finally get to see the lake for the first time. And immediately my eyes focus on one piece, one area that I really wanted to, that looked really good, right? It looked like a place you would fish. And so I couldn't get that out of my mind. I looked at it, and I mean, it was like just a gut feeling. So I ended up getting to the cabin that we rented for the week, and first thing in the morning, my dad and I go out for the first day of practice. Now this was 2 weeks prior to the event, right? I'm putting some serious time in. And I remember going to that exact spot that I saw for the first time the night before. And I get out there and we start crushing them, right? The smallmouth are just everywhere. And I mean, I had 18, 19 pounds fairly quickly. And I thought, this is way too good to be true. And so I actually remember it like it was yesterday. This was the bait I was throwing. Just a Super Spook Junior. This one's actually retired now. All the paint's wore off. I've put some glue in it. I shouldn't say it's retired officially. It does come with me when I go to Lake Champlain, just because of the memories that I have of this bait. So every once in a while I give him a little bit of water time. But after that, so I actually ended up entering the FLW. It was like a 2-day BFL as a co-angler. So 2 weeks prior. I thought it'd be great to get some practice in and go do that. And I actually ended up fishing a few other spots and found some stuff on my own for the actual Open. But I jumped in the FLW as a co-angler, and we started fishing, and the guy was struggling pretty much, you know, for most of the day. And I knew of, it turns out it was more of a community hole anyways, but I found a spot in practice that I took him to, and we ended up doing really well. He actually did fairly well, and we ended up both cashing a check. So I cashed a check. I don't remember what place it was, but I mean, that was pretty cool that I was able to find those fish for my boater, and us took advantage of it and, you know, put a beat down on it. So I was really ready to go. That following week leading up to the event, I put sun up till sundown, ran all over the place. I never made it down to tie during that whole week. I kind of stayed north. I was more familiar with that type of water, and I just didn't feel I had to go south at the time. I had enough stuff going, and I was pumped up for this event. So here we go. We get into day one, and I'm heading up. This is my official first big tournament ever, and I'm making the run up to my spot. It's the same spot that I first saw when I drove to the lake the first time I saw Lake Champlain. And I pulled up to the area, and we started catching them. My co-angler was catching them. I was catching them. I mean, it was awesome. A lot of smallmouth. And then I actually started fishing a little area, and some big largemouth moved up. And at the time, I mean, I threw a tube a lot, right? This is the same tube that I threw up on Champlain. This tube's actually a Get Bit Baits tube. So moving forward, I want you guys to know that I don't have any tackle or bait sponsors whatsoever. So anything that I talk about, I shouldn't say that are paying me financially, okay? I do get discounts here and there. However, I'm not tied into any tackle manufacturer whatsoever. So when I talk about and we do how-tos and on-the-water footage, it's product that I use and that I love and that I will, you know, always use, regardless of sponsorship and things like that. So I just want to keep in mind, I will put all these baits down below so you guys can take a look at them in the links. But this bait here, actually, a buddy of mine, Kyle, back at home, gave me about 5 or 6 of these tubes. You know, he's like, here, give these a try. And so I had them in my box, and I ended up throwing up on some structure, and it was just a small piece of structure. and ended up catching like almost a 6-pound largemouth. About 20 minutes later, another one. 20 minutes later, another one. Within an hour, about 2 hours, I had 21 pounds, 5 ounces of largemouth in the live well, all caught on that tube. Okay? So, and get this, I mean, at the time, we're talking relic type of equipment, right? No extremely expensive rods. I think it was a Daiwa Exceller reels, you know, the kind that, you know, after a while the anti-reverse would stop and it would just start reeling backwards. I mean, I had like 6 or 7 spinning rods, and I think 3 of them the anti-reverse was broke on them. I mean, I didn't know any better. You know, my equipment back then was pretty poor, but you know, to be able to lead the tournament after day one, I think Ish Monroe was in 2nd place. And I mean, I was just overwhelmed. So write the phone calls and text messages and everything like that, start rolling in. I don't even think I had a Facebook account at the time. It would probably have been crazy. But going into day 2, obviously, I'm super excited. I head right back to the same spot, and the fish are not blowing up like they were the day before. However, my co-angler's throwing a wacky rig Cinco and just crushing them, right? And I had a couple follows. I was doing some hair jig stuff and just trying to figure out a way to get these fish to bite. And I had a small window of opportunity, so I moved over. Yeah, I'm talking, you know, a couple, you know, 30, 40, 50 yards to the spot that's the size of, you know, a car where all these largemouth were hanging out. And turns out somebody was actually fishing from shore. A couple kids had their bobbers out surrounding this piece of structure. So I couldn't even get up to it. And I waited it out a little bit, and they did end up, I think they got bored and took a walk, and I ended up casting my tube back in there and spanked a 5-pounder right away. And so as soon as they saw the commotion, they come running back and set up camp again. Okay, so at the time, I wasn't quite sure the proper etiquette, I guess. If I could go back, I probably would have just asked those kids if they minded if I could get in here and possibly fish. But I kept coming back every once in a while, just seeing if they left, and then I had to just leave that whole area and try to fill out a decent limit. And I did fairly well. I was sitting in 6th place after day 2. So day 3 comes, and I am ready to get back on that spot, right? I am going there first thing in the morning. I'm number 6 boat to get out. At that time, they broke it down. On the 3rd day, there's a certain amount of people that go out, depending on where you placed. So I'm heading out there, and I basically can see the spot as I get closer and closer and closer. I'm like, what is going on here? There's literally people swimming, you know, doing breaststrokes right there on my spot. Like they're practicing for the Olympics or something. I don't know. So needless to say, that spot was a bust. I bailed out of there right away and went to a few other secondary spots that I had. I ended up actually, I had 2 really good fish on. I should have had a lot better finish in that event. But, you know, things happen. I do recall a huge smallmouth coming off on a long cast on a Carolina rig. And, I mean, it just jumped and it was gone. Pretty devastating. And then I remember pulling up to another spot, and I knew I was going to get a bite there because every time in practice and throughout the whole week, I would pull up in this area, and it was always good. And so I dropped my drop shot down. I remember it was a purple, and I don't ever throw that color anymore. I should start again. I guess I outgrew it. You know, I didn't know any better, but it was a 5-inch purple Cinco on a drop shot, and I flipped the bail, dropped it straight down. The fish bit within 20 seconds, and I reel up, setting the hook, and of course, the anti-reverse, that was one of the reels where the anti-reverse wasn't working right, so it spun out backwards on me, basically a bunch of slack line and a jammed up mess, and that fish was gone. So, I mean, never want to make that mistake again. I want to make sure I have the proper equipment moving forward. Even in the Elites, I struggled with my equipment, you know, as far as having the right gear that I needed. So, I mean, today, everything's top notch. I don't make that mistake ever. And I make sure all my equipment's working right, because you have to be able to control what you can control. And if you guys get anything out of this video, really, you have to control your thoughts, and you have to control anything else that you can as far as equipment, things like that. You have a choice to take care of your stuff, make sure it's right. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be the most expensive. It should be the best quality gear that you can afford at that price, and then try to take care of it. I've been guilty of it. I've actually really have become a lot more organized in the last couple years with my gear, and it's helped out tremendously. Okay, so now we are on Lake St. Clair. It's 2010, and I'm in the second tournament, big tournament of my life, the Bassmaster Northern Open. And Lake St. Clair, man, what can I say? It was awesome, right? It fit my style. It reminded me of back home in the Door County, Lake Michigan, Bay of Green Bay area. A little bit more grass and a little bit more current in certain spots, but I got a good week and a half of practice in there. I remember camping there at a campground with one of my buddies from back home, who was also fishing the Opens. So we made that drive. Actually, I was on the lower part of south of Detroit. I didn't know at the time. I mean, it was okay, but I was south of Detroit on Lake Erie. So every morning we had to commute through Detroit to head up to, I don't know, what is it, St. Clair Shores boat launch there. But I spent a lot of time out on Lake St. Clair, even though we could run to Erie. And at the time, I just didn't have a whole lot of experience on Lake Erie. And so I ended up focusing on Lake St. Clair, and I found a couple key spots. I located this area probably fairly quickly in practice, and it was a shallow deal where I could sight fish and actually see them cruising. So in that tournament, it was all about the drop shot, and primarily, I believe it was a crosstail shad and a spirit shad was the two main baits that I used in that event. And basically, I stayed in one area all 3 days and ended up coming out of there with a ninth place finish. So after walking away with a 9th place finish on the Detroit River, a place I've never been to before, but I really liked that style of fishing, and it was an amazing feeling. Obviously, being second in points in Angler of the Year in the Opens. Now, Ryan Said was in first place, but I believe it's because he had a first or second on Champlain, and then he did another top. He didn't have a first on Champlain. Wolak won that. I mean, he was right up there, and then he had a really good finish on St. Clair as well. So it was a head-to-head battle between him and I going into the Chesapeake Bay event, where they take the top two back then to the Bassmaster Classic. So I was in the hunt, and again, it was just so unreal that things happened so quickly. So now I have to go back home. I get a month to prepare, but I have to learn about the Chesapeake Bay, and there wasn't a whole lot of information out there online that I could find at the time. There was a few articles and videos here and there, but it was it turns out it was going to be a very tough tournament, and I really didn't know what to expect going into that event. So that tournament was mid-September, and I spent a good 2 weeks on the Chesapeake. I remember camping at this rustic little deal on the west shore of the Northeast River, and I believe my truck wasn't even my Tahoe. It was my parents' truck at the time. The transmission goes out on the thing. When I was coming back from, I think I was down towards Baltimore, coming up to Northeast Maryland, and the transmission goes out. So I had to deal with that. There was some boat issues at that event as well. I think some trolling motor issues. So, you know, I was kind of like, okay, I was, you know, being shown what it's really like to be on tour and traveling and fishing in tournaments. So I get there and I have quite a bit of time to figure it out. I mean, knowing now what I know now on the Chesapeake after, you know, spending a couple of years on it, it's, I mean, I didn't need 2 weeks. I guess you do if you're not familiar with it, but it's so random there. It's like, there's like, I don't know. It's hard to explain the Chesapeake. I don't have the greatest feelings for that place, but, you know, I don't mind it, but it's, I don't even know. I can't even describe it. So getting back to the story, I ended up finding some fish, and it was actually in an area that Ryan said found some fish as well. So day one of the tournament, he's in first, I'm in second in points, and we're basically head to head. We make a hour-long run and end up in the same spot. He literally was 50 yards away from me where I sat down. I mean, I mean, that's pretty crazy, right? So the first day of the Open, here we are fishing together, and I think I made out a little bit better than he did on that day. I came in with a limit. I actually had a limit fairly quick that day, where I think he only brought in 1 fish, or maybe he zeroed. But he ended up falling in the points, and I was able to overcome that. But I still needed a good finish, obviously. So day two, I ended up catching a few fish here and there. I don't remember. I know it was a struggle. I know I caught a couple good ones. I caught one flipping, and I pretty much stayed on a spinnerbait bite. I was basically using the finesse spinnerbait here pretty much throughout the whole event, which turns out to be a great tidal water bait, by the way. And so going into the last day, I remember one key fish was a pretty good sized fish. I caught it in a marina off of, a buddy of mine gave me a tip on the type of bait to use going into day 3. And I mean, I threw it a lot all day long and struggled, but I did catch one key fish. I remember, if I can find it, I'm going to list it in this video. I'm going to put a link to it, or maybe I can get it going here and edit it into this footage. But it's a video of me talking with George Accord from Susquehanna Fishing Tackle during the tournament. He actually witnessed me catching this fish in front of him in this marina, and I put on quite a show. Needless to say, I mean, I was pretty pumped up about that fish and went a little crazy, which is, I mean, I just let loose, you know what I mean? I was high-fiving, probably hugging and tackling my Marshall, and George is just sitting there like, who's this guy? What's going on? I mean, it was funny. So hopefully I can find that video and put it up for you guys to take a look.
Oh, I was fishing to win this thing because you know I was going to win this thing. Well, this guy was in, I think he's a cheesehead or something. He was in, he has this accent. What'd you wait? And he was in this marina and he's like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I need a fish or something. So I swirled out around this dock and I went up and I thought, well, maybe he'll fish that. So he throws his bait up in there. And next thing I know, my peace and solitude is shattered. Oh, I got one, he says. Get the net. This co-angler's like, I don't know what to do. He's wrapped around every piling in the marina. He goes, oh, Lord, please, please stay on. Oh, he's screaming. Finally, this fish comes out. It's a pretty big one, and they get it in the net. Then it got loud.
However,
there he is.
However, I did go around you to catch that fish.
I went out and left you then. Hey, guess what? That's his new spot.
I ended up walking away with another top 20. I think it was 16th, 17th, 18th place, something like that. And I ended up actually falling a little bit. Nate Wellman came up from behind in that event. He won that event and ended up bumping me out of the Classic spot. So bad news is I wasn't going to make the Bassmaster Classic that year. The good news is I qualified for the Elite Series. So that's a whole nother bunch of videos, and we will get into that a little bit from time to time, some of the stories on tour. But from here on out, I'm sick of talking about myself, okay? Let's talk about some tips and techniques, and let's talk about some how-tos and put some cool content together for you guys. I'm glad you stuck with me this long through these video series. Just want to get an introduction, you know, let you know who I am, what I'm all about, and where we're heading. So if you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and please put your comments below, and we will see you on the water.